Okay, and we're back. So we are going now. We talked about community healing, and now we're going to talk about another system, another type of folk healing, folk medicine called humoral healing, Humoral healing. Okay. Um, so here we go. Let's just move on to this next slide here and get myself reduced. Zombie back there. Okay. And grab a pen in case I need one. Did you like blue? Let's try cyan, whatever the hell that is. Okay. All right. So humoral healing is based on a philosophy of balance, keeping balance among different elements that are believed to be within the body and within the environment. So it's all this idea of balance of uh, these substances or these forces or whatever they might be, these elements, as Miller puts it. So disease, right, in these systems is seen as a result of some kind of an imbalance that can then be counteracted. You can counteract them either through diet or changes of behavior or different kinds of medicines or other sorts of treatments, right, that are believed to restore balance. So I have some examples of humoral systems or humoral things here. So here, I'm going to put them all up. Okay. And move myself. All right. So, over down here on the left, in the left corner. All right. This is these things is another. I showed you a version of this on the very first slide of our presentation, part one. And so these are the chakras, right, within ancient Indian practice, okay? And the chakras are these energy centers, right, within the body that have to be kept in balance. And so a lot of old yoga practice was centered around keeping or maintaining the balance of the chakras. And so again, you want to think of them as like energy centers that are either problems that you're having, either physical or emotional or whatever, are the result of these different energy centers being blocked and how they have to be kept open and aligned and all that. So that's a form of humoral healing. Over here on the right, this is from Europe. This is actually an old wood carving, but some of you maybe have heard of this before. So this is the four bodily humors of the ancient Greeks, and this belief in the action of these bodily humors was carried from the ancient Greeks all the way through the Middle Ages and even into the Renaissance. So the ancient Greeks believed that health was a consequence of maintaining balance between what they called the four bodily humors, and those were blood. So here, this is, there you go, blood and phlegm, all right, and yellow bile, okay, and black bile, all right. So blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. And again, the belief that sicknesses, diseases, and even personality disorders. So this was not only the base of what we maybe would think of as physical medicine, right, but also people believed in personality, right, as a consequence of the balance of these humors, right. So again, how do you keep them in balance? Well, you can keep them in balance by for example, through eating certain kinds of foods, or if you were lacking one, you could eat certain kinds of food and restore the balance. Or on the very first slide of part one, I had a picture of a man being bled, right? And so bleeding, using bleeding, either through lancing arteries, or lancing veins, I should say, or through the use of leeches and things like that, was all about restoring some sort of balance, right, to these humors. Okay. Now in the middle, we have this Chinese herbalist, and in Chinese tradition, Chinese healing tradition, there's also a belief in bodily humors. What they talk about, though, is a balance between hot and cold, hot and cold. And so this man is an herbalist. So the belief is that we can restore the balance, right, between hot and cold by the taking of different combinations of herbs. So different sorts of physical symptoms that you would be feeling would be the consequence of an imbalance between hot and cold. And you would go into this guy and you would say something like, I've been having these headaches and I can't sleep. And then he'll go back to these shelves and he'll pull off some different herbs, and he'll mix them up for you and then prescribe them to you. And you would take them usually in the form of a tea or something like that. So that's humoral healing. Now, I think while I'm here, and while I have this picture of the herbalist here, I think this might be a good place to just say a little something, because I don't have a lot on it, but say a little something about healing substances. Miller talks about healing substances, and she gives us some examples of healing substances. So what we see here, what we see this man doing here, mixing up these different herbs. This would be an example of what we call phytotherapy. Okay, phytotherapy, that's a word, that's a term that Miller gives you in your book. PHYTO therapy, phytotherapy, and it's healing, healing through the use of plants. Okay. And we do it. I mean, people in the West do it. I mean, I went on a cruise to Bermuda last summer, and everybody was chewing ginger gum, right, to keep from getting seasick. So that's an example of phytotherapy. Okay. So healing through the use of plants. You also get healing through the use of minerals. That's another one. So I'm just going to tell you, in your book, and you read this in Miller's chapter, is just pay a little bit of attention. She gives you some examples in there. Pay a little bit of attention to, the use of sand baths in Korea, or radon spas in different parts of the world. And those have more to do with minerals, using minerals. And then, what's another kind of healing substance? Well, in the Western biomedical tradition, right, or in the Western biomedical model, another healing substance would be pharmaceuticals, right? Drugs of different kinds. Now, one thing I would say about pharmaceuticals is that, many of the things that we use as drugs actually have their origins, right, in things like phytotherapy. So, for example, aspirin, right? There was a time when people were, a long time ago, right, people would have headaches. They would, for example, make a tea, or they would chew on willow bark, right? And, one of the things that they found out, or one of the things we know, right, is that when they invented aspirin, it was simply a putting into tablet form that ingredient, that substance that was in willow bark. So, I mean, that there's a connection here between all of them, and it relates to Miller talking about the importance of, maintaining cultural diversity, because a lot of folk practices around the world that draw on things like phytotherapy or the use of minerals and so forth could actually inform the Western biomedical model in terms of the creation of new kinds of pharmaceuticals and so on. So where we're going to go next then is to talking about healers. And again, I don't have a lot to say about this. You can read this on your own, but let's look at different sorts of healers. All right, I have a big whole list of them here. So we start with this idea, right, that within a culture, there are healers, and healers are recognized to have different abilities, special abilities to treat health problems. Okay, so every healing system has its healer, right? Every healing system has its healer. So, for example, you got midwives, right? There's midwives around still, even in our society, people still prefer to go to the midwife. And they are not, I don't think they are part of the Western biomedical model, but certainly there's a place where midwifery and the Western medical model kind of overlap with each other. Okay. All right. So we got midwives, and this is the best picture I could come up with to depict the midwife. I like this coffee mug here. Awesome midwife at your cervix. I don't know. I think it's funny. It's not that funny, but it's pretty funny. Let's admit it. Okay. So midwives, bone setters, right? It's probably pretty obvious what bone setters do. Find those in different folk practices, right? Traditional practices. Shamans and shamankas. Okay, so a shaman is a person who is believed to be able to mediate between humans and the spirit world. Remember this overlap between healing and religion, right? And a shamanka is a female. That's the female version of a shaman. So I have a picture here of this is a Yanomamo shaman. Okay. Herbalists. Well, I showed you a picture on the previous page, right, of an herbalist. Acupuncturists. Acupuncture comes from Chinese practice, or at least that's the way people in the West found out about it. And my recollection is I was a kid when it happened, but back around 1971 or 1972, President Richard Nixon went off to China. It was a huge deal to meet with Mao Zedong. And he was followed, he was covered by all kinds of media. And while there, somebody working for one of the news outlets came down with appendicitis and had to have surgery, and part of his pain treatment, part of his management of pain in China was the use of acupuncture. And so it was really through the use of acupuncture in China that people in the West found out about acupuncture. And now it's pretty popular in places like the United States. So I have a picture of some acupuncture needles. What else do we have here? We have general practitioners, right? Doctors. There's another kind of silly cartoon there. Nurses. Okay, so some of you are going to be nurses, and what I'm trying to say here is that within the Western biomedical model, right, within the Western biomedical system, you are going to be a healer, right? You are a type of healer within the Western biomedical system. There's some happy nurses. physical therapists, right? Chiropractors, not again, chiropractors not exactly within the Western biomedical model. Probably a kind of a rivalry even between chiropractors and Western biomedicine, but definitely a type of practice that many people look toward, and many people have put a lot of faith in, have a lot of stock. They put a lot of stock in it, have a lot of confidence in it. I have cousins who are chiropractors. Okay, dentist, another one. Nobody likes the dentist, right? But I'm not being an anti-dentite, right? But dentist there. Okay, another specialty within Western biomedicine. Hospice care providers. I got to move my picture here for a second. So hospice care providers. All right, another, and many, 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 many more. All right. So there we have, I don't think I have any more here. Nope. So there we have our, there we have our list of healers. Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm going to keep those annotations. Thank you. And we are going to see you again soon. And the next thing we're going to get into